Did you get that? Like
Yes.
recording? Okay, cool.
Okay. I think we're good then. Okay, guys, I'm here with one of my best friends, AJ. We went to
Hello.
school together for a million years, a long time ago. And today we are going to interview AJ about his experiences. Alrighty, so we're going to start with some background questions, AJ. Can you share a bit about your experience growing up in a religious environment, and did you feel pressure to act a certain way, to be seen as masculine?
Yes, okay, so I grew up Roman Catholic. Both my mother and father are like were like practicing Roman Catholics. Like I was in a Catholic preschool. I went to like Catholic primary school. Um, and we would go to church every Sunday. Like we were very much incorporated in that community, but also like I don't know, like my families were pretty structured from the religion. Like my dad came from a Spanish background, my mom came from an Italian background. So, both of their families also encouraged that as being like the kind of the way to live your life. Um, and I think just like in Catholic school or just, when you are taught those beliefs, like when you actually look and read the Bible, like there are kind of certain features or there's a certain virtues that are like kind of encouraged or seen as positive as being a man. And there are very like set, I don't know, differentiations between what makes a woman and what makes a man. And those are definitely like enforced in a Catholic structure when you go to church that often, when you are surrounded by it in school. And it does not necessarily pressure. Well, I guess it rewards masculinity in that kind of biblical context, but in doing so pressures, people who might not fit into that certain, cookie cutter to act that certain way, or, because Catholicism specifically does kind of thrive on guilt, makes you feel guilty for not being that way, or makes you like prompt the questions of like, why don't I have these like urges to be out on like the playground, like beating the crap out of each other and rather just like, you know, being on the swings or like drawing with chalk and like why is that not a positive thing? But I mean, it is because when you trickle it down and trickle it back, there are certain rewards that are seen in like aggression that tie to masculinity.
Mhm. Totally. Um, I remember when we were 16 years old, for context, AJ and I went to middle school together at a Christian private school. And before I ask the next question, can you give a little bit of context behind your experiences at Santa Fe, like during those like years in middle
Yeah.
school and like kind of how that was for you?
Yeah, I mean, when I mentioned that I went to Catholic primary school, so I was in Catholic school pretty much from preschool until fourth grade, and then when I went to fourth grade, I kind of decided I wanted to be at a school with different kids, like a public school where we didn't have to wear uniforms and where it wasn't so, I don't know, like focused
Rigid.
on, yeah, exactly, like it wasn't so rigid, but also like I'd known those kids that I were in school with for such a long time, and my sister had just moved to a public school, and I thought that I wanted to do the same too. So I went to public school until I went to Santa Fe Christian, and even like in public school, there was like that kind of masculine ideal or the masculine archetype, but that's because La Jolla, where I grew up, is a very like Christian based community. Like most people in La Jolla are Christian or Jewish, but the Jewish community is so tight that, you know, I didn't really go to school with many Jewish kids. Like they were all in, the Jewish private schools. But anyway, so even there at like Muirlands, I had more friends that were girls. I mean, I had guy friends that I had been hanging out with since I was a little boy, so it was just like weird for me to not be hanging out with them anymore. And I felt that I had a good balance when I was at that public school. And even though like my peers or my classmates may perceived me as like being gay or like, being not that masculine kind of stereotype, I like didn't really feel discouraged, or I didn't feel like that was a threat to my identity. Like at that point, I was just like a 12 or 13-year-old boy. Like I didn't even know I was gay. Like I didn't really have that full allowing of myself to like actually craft or like fall into what my own sexual identity is until I was like much older in life because I was a late bloomer. Like I didn't really go through puberty until like the very end of middle school or like the beginning of high school. So I didn't
Yeah.
really have those types of like beliefs or thoughts other than what was like kind of societally expected and religiously expected. But then when I went to Santa Fe Christian, it was like a whole new group of people, and I like totally didn't have guy friends. Like it was a pretty stark contrast. Like I didn't really think about it or like I wasn't really bummed about it. I've always like kind of naturally gravitated towards having friends that were girls just because like my own household, like I grew up in a household like mostly with my single mom and my sister, and it was just the three of us. And, just because of that, like, I felt more comfortable around women. So when it came to making friends, like, I always became friends with girls. But at Santa Fe Christian, there was definitely a huge jump from public to private, from
Yeah.
non-denominational to Christian. And there was like, such an idea of like what it is to be a man and like to be kind of that I don't know. There was also like definitely a lot of privilege associated with that. But there was like masculinity and the way that it was defined at Santa Fe Christian was like through being in sports, like through being able to like be with the most amount of girls, which is crazy because it was like eighth grade. Like I went there for eighth grade. Um, but like who had the most money and who was like the best looking or who the girls thought were the best looking. And it all
Mhm.
came down to like who is the most kind of who falls into that archetype of being a man the most that is kind of portrayed by the Bible, like strength, um, a lack of cowardice, a few other characteristics that I can't really like pin to the top of my head, but that do kind of craft what that kind of definition is in a Christian
Yeah,
context specifically.
for sure. Um, so when we were like about 16, probably like sophomores in high school or so, I remember that you always were so confident on the outside, but I feel like there was some kind of part of you on the inside that was like yearning to kind of be your truest self. But I feel like from my perspective, like I could kind of see you like challenging with that. And one time I remember we were driving in your car and you mentioned we were kind of like talking about religion and stuff, and we were talking about like your Catholic background and all of that. And you were just kind of kept saying, like, well, being gay isn't a sin, like being gay isn't a sin, which I totally agree.
Mhm.
But that made me kind of think, like, how was your perspective on faith and sexuality, and like how has that kind of evolved over the years?
Yeah. I mean, when I was younger, the way that I kind of like understood my sexuality was pretty much my entire upbringing. My dad was like, being gay is the worst thing you can do. Like that would be the worst thing that you could do to me as a father. Like at a very young age because like I was his namesake. I'm his only son and like he came from a really kind of hyper abusive household and like very Catholic household. So like he had these views that were like unchallenged at that point and like these biases that he never really like felt a need to understand. Um, so always like at a young age, I never was like, oh, maybe I'm gay because I just believed that just was not in the cards. But I always like had the thought like, why don't I like girls the same way that, other guys in my age group like girls. Like I have beautiful girlfriends. Like all of my friends were like the prettiest girls, that was like the gag. And that's like another reason why a lot of straight guys were like, like what is going on here? Like why do they all want to be his friend?
It
Like
was
what
like
and
out of
he's
their
not
own
like
like insecurity.
exactly. But like I never felt like an attraction towards them. Um but yeah, when I go out to the bars and every now and again I have one too many, like I'll kiss a friend, but like that's just out of like the same like
Yeah.
admiration that you kiss a dog. Um but then like one of the things like where I was just coming to like my own beliefs is like I have a gay brother and two gay aunts and I was really exposed to that on my mother's side
Hmm.
very very much And when I was really starting to like form my own opinions, getting my license was a huge form of like, that was a big shift in my life where I felt a lot more
Yeah.
independence and I had the freedom to like, form more independent thoughts around that time because I was just going like 2, 3 hour drives, just get out of the house.
Yeah.
And that's when I was really like it isn't a bad thing. Like it's not a bad thing. Like my two brothers, they're like, the same. Actually, my gay brother is more successful. So like, if in the definition of like success and like reward and commitment to life, like the two examples that I had of older brothers, my gay brother was like definitely having a better life and like happier
Yeah.
and able to achieve more because he had more adversity growing up, because he had the
Yeah.
same challenges that I had. Um, so I think that like my perspective shifted once like I started to form my own opinions and once I started to like feel comfortable to like form those opinions. And like a lot had happened, through the years. I was 16 and in 2017 and like gay marriage had just been legalized 2 years before. Like
Hmm.
there wasn't really any sort of rhetoric that was even discussed in my communities, like my Catholic, Santa Fe Christian,
Yeah.
La Jolla, like as a community that really positively encouraged that until that happened. And then people started feeling a little bit more comfortable and like protected. Um, yeah.
Totally. And then kind of touching, both of your parents come from different cultures and races. Do you think that either of those had like an effect on you coming out? Like especially, I guess more so with your dad. Did that have any kind of touch on that at all?
So, like I said, I have a gay brother. And he actually passed away in 2020. And before that, he and my mom were very close, and they had always been the closest. And there was definitely a little bit more of a like, I don't know, suspicion when he was younger that he was gay. So my mom always just knew it, understood it, and like felt the closest to him as a child, like
Yeah.
because when she got married once and had two boys and then got married again and had me and my sister. So there was a big age gap. I'm my mom's favorite now. But anyway. Um yeah, so like when that happened, but I mean before that had happened, like I had talked to my brother and my brother, I'm sure he had his suspicions about me. He was just waiting for me to have my comfort. Like at the same time when I was around 16 years old, like he moved back to San Diego and we would see each other more often. And he would always kind of just give me stories that weren't any sort of pressure to me to come out, but more just like, here's what to expect.
Yeah.
And one of the things that was like really mentioned a lot was so they were my father's stepchildren, and then my mother and father got divorced. Um, so my father didn't really have like a familial or like direct obligation to keep them in his life. But one of my brothers he did. And then that was around the same time that Darius came out, and he just completely shut Darius out and like pretty much disowned him in Darius' words. That's my gay brother. So that always intimidated me, along with the fact that like after Darius passed away, this is just an example. I like had a rainbow flag keychain on my keys, and my dad like this was during COVID. He just like ran upstairs and he like busted my door down. And he's like, "Are you gay? Like I found this on your keys. Like, are you gay? Just tell me." Like literally yelling at me, and I was like, "No, no, no. Like stop." But at around that time, like I had started to like really feel a little bit more comfortable like having those types of thoughts. Like
Yeah.
I was really thinking at that point, like maybe I'm bisexual. Like because now that I'm like starting to feel attraction towards people, like I feel attracted to men. Like I go out and like I remember specifically when I was 16, I like went to Paris and I was like, whoa, like these men are beautiful. And like I didn't really have that same type of like thought process when I was like looking at the beautiful women around me. And I always say like Paris is what turned me like gay, but it's a joke because like being out of my own, I don't know, community, being out of La Jolla and like being in a
Yeah.
different place physically and, you know, being able to almost like have a mask on of being a tourist, like just gave me the comfort to like look around and like just think like, damn, like guys are hot.
Yeah.
Um, and so yeah, I think my mom, she had a lot more exposure at a younger time in her age. Um, because her sisters were gay. And then my brother was gay. And she and my brother were like very, very close. But my
Mhm.
dad never had that exposure. He doesn't have any gay family other than me.
Yeah.
He, you know, grew up in a very, very abusive Spanish Catholic household that did have this crazy view like of masculinity. Like Spanish Catholic is just like literally like going to a therapist is seen as weak and seen as like a non-masculine. Like I remember when I was like when my dad started to go through the divorce with my mom and we requested to go see a therapist, like he told me like real men don't see therapists. I mean, he would never say that now. He has come an incredibly long way. Like, I'm very proud of him. Like, he and I are very close now. Like, I live with him right now. We see each other, like, all the time. We travel all the time. Like, it's definitely an exposure that is a key element in being able to just show people, like, you know, I'm the same person. Like, like it doesn't really change my patterns, my thoughts, my
Yeah.
presentation. Like I am who I am. Um, but it was definitely harder to come out to him. I remember like when I was leading up to the time where like I had my first boyfriend and I was starting to hang out with him a lot. And I was lying to him about like being at my friend Bailey's house when I would really just go hang out with my, you know, boyfriend. And then it got to a point where my boyfriend was like, I don't feel super comfortable with just like hiding. And,
Yeah.
you know, I think, yeah, I don't want to pressure you, but I think that like you should come out to your dad. Like it's time. And I was like, okay. Like I kind of needed that push. Usually I wouldn't really like encourage someone coming out for someone and like that turning into like resentment because it never works well. But it was
Mhm.
in like a healthy way, strange enough. Like
Yeah.
he was more encouraging me to do it rather than like giving me some sort of ultimatum. But I remember at that point I had like pulled myself so far away from my dad because I was scared of him disowning me. Like he pretty much disowned my brother. And I just wrote him a letter and I left the letter at the house and he read it. He texted me like I got your letter. And then didn't really talk to me for the next month. And then after that month he just called me and he was like, I've processed it. I've talked to my gay friends. I talked to your sister. I've talked to my aunt, and I just want to let you know, like, the reason I was a little bit reluctant to talk to you is because I didn't want to say anything that sounded bad, and I didn't want to hurt you. But you're still my son, obviously, and I love you. Um, and I'm sorry if I like made you feel uncomfortable about the years. Like he was very, you know, cool after that like cool time, and we ended up like 4 months later taking a 3 month or 3 week long trip to Europe together. Um, and that was just, you know, really bonding experience. I think that was really nice and important for him to just see like I'm the same person. Like
Yeah.
I have the same brain, I
Yeah.
have the same morals, I have the same ethics, I have the same thought processes. You know, there's nothing that my sexual identity does to like define me.
I think that's super interesting, kind of when you first started answering that. You mentioned that he has gay friends. Yeah, it's such a challenging time accepting you at
Clients.
the beginning of
And
it.
that's kind of as far as I'll go in that regard, but they're his
Yeah.
clients, so he does work for them.
Yeah. Okay. And then did you ever feel like you had to navigate your racial identity differently from your peers when it came to be like fitting in, or being seen as masculine, either in like the LGBTQ community or just like friends growing up? Was
I
that a
mean,
you
definitely
faced?
not like I don't think my race had anything really to do with it. Like the problems that I had with my race growing up were like being the only remotely like dark person in an
Yeah.
extremely white community, but nobody really in my family, except for my dad every now and again, he'd be like, you know, Spaniards are strong men. Um, you know, kind of affected that, I'd say.
Yeah. Um, okay, I'm trying to figure out what my next question is. Um, Okay, so the reading kind of touches on how masculinity is performed rather than something inherent. Looking back, were there times when you felt like you had to perform masculinity to fit in? Um, and how have you kind of changed and handled that over the years?
I mean, here's the other thing. My dad is pretty comfortable with his masculinity, which is why a lot of people, when they actually know who my dad is, and you know, I tell my story about coming out, they're like, "Your dad is weird about that." Like he wears like pink polo shirts, he wears fedoras, like he wears like
I was
white
gonna say,
loafers and like
really,
white
yeah,
pants. So like I think the perception of masculinity in like San Diego at least is like, you wear your surf brands, you don't really like present yourself in like a flamboyant way. My dad's pretty damn flamboyant, like
yeah,
with his like metrosexuality or whatever the hell he calls it. Um, so like he actually encouraged me to like kind of stand out and to like dress a little bit more non-masculine.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, like I think that his own teachings differed from what my community's teachings were. Like I remember him telling me like you can never be too overdressed for an event. And that's just like not really in tune with what I think is enforced by the religious masculine archetype.
yeah, totally. Um, The reading also kind of explores the reading from the Research on Masculinities chapter. It explores how different types of masculinity exist rather than just one dominant form. I think you kind of went over this just now, kind of explaining your dad's kind of like idea of masculinity versus your peers. But have you found or created a version of masculinity to you specifically that feels authentic to you? And what does that kind of look like?
I mean, yeah, there are like the different forms of masculinity. Like I think the different forms in our community are like the form that's like really generic and like seen as masculine by other men, which is just like I don't know, like very like Joe Rogan experience type masculinity. And then there's like paternal masculinity, which is like you can provide for your family, you can like be comfortable with your child and like you can go out with your child and hold your child and like nurture your child. And that's seen as like a type of like nurturing masculinity. And then there's the masculinity where it's like you're out in the business world making a crap ton of money. And like you can be gay. You can be super gay. But if you're like on Wall Street making a crap ton of money, they won't care because the type of
Yeah.
community that you're in there is like the one who makes the most money is the most man. So my father was very much like in the business sector of masculinity and he was you know found comfort in that. That's why he could like present himself a little bit more flamboyantly and not really have that hindered. And I think like I've also taken a little bit of that where I'm like, I don't necessarily like fall into any square box when it comes to like masculinity. I think the way that like my own I don't know, likes are tangent to types of masculinity that are societally seen are like, I'm comfortable in my skin of being a man. Like, if somebody is mean to me, like, I won't not be mean back. Like, if I'm at a bar and someone like, not saying that this has happened, it's only like happened one time. But if I'm at a bar and someone like calls me the F slur, then like I'll beat them up. Like I'll get a certain type of adrenaline where I'll just like I'll hit them. Like I won't really take that kind of stuff. But I don't think that that's seen as necessarily like hyper masculine, but it's seen as like some sort of like respect and being able to protect your own
Yeah.
respect, which also is like a masculine trait.
Yeah.
I also think like being comfortable in the way that I present myself, which like sometimes can be masculine, like wearing darker colors, wearing less form-fitting clothes. But then there are times where like I'll go out wearing like more form-fitting clothes and wearing things that are like seen a little bit more as like feminine. But when I present myself in them and like I show that I'm like comfortable in my skin as a man, like people will go less along the form of like, oh, like you have a woman's figure to, oh, you have like a model figure. So like not really seeing it that way because I'm more comfortable in like the way that I present myself.
Mhm.
Um, and I also think that like my interest in like technology and my interest in like mechanics and my interest in engineering is also seen as like a form of masculinity that I'm comfortable in that's also seen in society because like it's knowledge based and it kind of
Or
goes
even
in
like stereotyping masculinity. Like I remember when we first became friends, I think I was like in sixth grade and like my parents picked us up from that. It was Scream Zone or something around
yeah.
Halloween time. And you were just going off about cars with my
I
dad.
was literally about to also say that
My
I'm like a
dad
car junkie.
like
Like
was obsessed with me. My dad's like a macho, like whatever, like alpha male kind of guy, and he like loved you. And so you've just kind of always been like authentically yourself, I feel like, and you just stick to what you like, and it's kind of your own definition way of being masculine, I think. But that was one of my favorite memories.
I remember that too.
And then really quickly before we wrap this up, because it looks like we have like 3 more minutes.
Mhm.
I'm providing the class with some of the pictures from your Catholic confessional booth project that you did, and I think that was for your thesis, right?
Yeah.
So can you kind of talk us through that and share like the meaning behind it and how your religion and sexuality like intersected on that project?
Yeah. So like I mean, the prompt was to do something that was like meaningful to you. There were like other real technical projects that I wanted to pursue, but after like really thinking about it, I came to the conclusion and like also through a lot of conversation with my peers who were Catholic and came out as gay because I went to a Jesuit school in San Francisco, so there were a lot of those. Um, the first like true thing that you have to do when you're raised in a Catholic context and you're starting to like understand your sexual identity, and if it isn't, straight, you have to like have that confession with yourself.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that I had to do. So my project was like a single stall confessional booth with mirrors on the inside. And that kind of like prompted, that metaphor. Like you need to confess to yourself. But then there were also like speakers on the inside that kind of played at different points, like kind of speeches or experiences that people recorded about their experience of in coming out with the Catholic Church and that rejection, the denial, the having to come to terms with it, the fear of coming out to your family. And the idea was to kind of like show whoever's in the booth, like it's possible. You have to confess it to yourself, listen to these stories. Everyone who has gone through it and prevailed has similar back, like kind of, there's a bond there. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what the project kind of talked about.
That's so awesome. I love that.
Thank you.
Well, it was a pleasure chatting with
Me
you. I
too.
love you to death.
I love you too. I'm excited to
And
see you soon.
thank you so much for being a part of this, and I love you so much.
I love you too. Bye.